Hey everyone, it's Kenya. I thought today I'd bring you about a 30-minute or so practice focused on our psoas and our hip flexors. I recently wrote an article about springtime and how that really had me thinking about our psoas and fluidity, and I thought we would focus on a practice today just on our psoas and how we can work with it. So let's get started. Today you'll need a chair, strap, block, bolsters or blankets, and of course you don't need a mat. You can do a blanket on the floor if that would work. Blocks, you can substitute large books. Blankets or a bolster, you can make a bolster with 2 blocks and blankets laying over it. If you don't have yoga blankets, you can do nice beach towels. You could use a couch cushion for a bolster as well. But that's, and straps, you can use a belt or a tie. But let's get started. So gather your supplies and let's meet on the mat. So I'm here on my mat. I'm gonna stand, offer you the choice. We're gonna stand. You can also do this sitting, and then we'll move to the floor. But let's stand for right now. Ground our base, lift our toes, ground the base of our big toe, pinky toe, and kind of tone down into our heels and really feel the center, kind of back center of our arches anchor us to the floor. Knees are slightly bent, shoulders up, down, and back. You can have hands forwards or hands at your side. And let's settle in here. Maybe take our left hand to our heart, right hand to our belly, low abdomen here. And let's just step in and notice our breath. And let's let everything just settle kind of down into that strong support that our feet are offering, feeling our feet on the floor and just noticing where our breath is here. And we'll bring our hands down. And on an inhale, we'll take our arms out to the side, palms come forward. Inhaling, palms come to face each other at a V, or if it feels comfortable for your shoulders, palms touching. Mine are at a V. And then exhale out the mouth, whooshing. And as we practice that whooshing, either verbally out our mouth or that ocean breathing where our mouth is closed and we're making that fogging the mirror sound, we'll notice, and maybe notice a cinching and then zipping action like you're zipping a pair of pants. And that's important as we move forward to support our low back and just provide us that core engagement to provide some safe choices as we move forward today. So let's start with our psoas and just check in. You're going to need a block. I have a block here. I'm going to put it on the lowest level. And I'm going to get my chair because I need some chair for balance. I'm going to step up on my block with my right foot. I'm going to make sure I check in with that right foot to do that engagement we talked about, big toe, pinky toe, heel. I'm also going to engage that left foot as well. And then I'm going to notice, is my hip dropped? Is my hip hiked up? I'm going to work to really level out my pelvis. Slight bend in the knees. And I'm just going to take my left hand on my left thigh. Inhale, and on an exhale, just give that thigh a push. And we're just going to swing here to see how our psoas is feeling on this left side. And the psoas connects our torso all the way down through our groin. And just notice, did you get resistance? Did it feel free? How is the psoas on that side? And we're going to come down and we'll switch sides. Step up with our left foot. Move my chair a little bit. Center of the block, base of the big toe, little toe, heel. Check in with my hip. Get my block right. So our hip's not up, it's not down, but we have slight bend in the knee. Both feet are actively engaged. Slight bend in the knee. I know this knee had wanted to hyperextend down, but slight bend in the knee. Checking those hip points. Right hand on the thigh. And we just give a little nudge, like a pendulum, and see how our psoas is on our right side. And notice if you feel any different. I know this side's a little bit cranky today, so I'm noticing a little bit of resistance, a little bit of crankiness. And bring it back when we step down. Let's have our chair handy in case we need it. You move your block to the side. We'll come back to our mountain pose. If it feels good to you, take a nice three-dimensional breath. Exhale through the mouth. Practice that cinching and zipping. And let's work on some additional kind of psoas, fluidity, hip movements as we're coming into spring. So I'm going to use my chair again. I'm going to come in weight bearing on my right side, come up to my tippy toes. Inhale, exhaling. I'm going to slightly lift my foot off the floor, knee is bent. And we're just going to like play with internally rotating, externally rotating. So internal, external, letting the hip kind of guide this. Not so much swaying, your pelvis, but isolating it to the hip. And I like to think of shining my ankle forward and then shining my ankle back, shining forward, the inner ankle back. And then we'll switch sides. So let's switch sides. Bring the weight in the left foot, big toe, little toe, heel, anchor. Inhale, cinching, raising our knee. Toes are actively engaged, and we isolate, rotating in, external, in, external, internal. Really isolating the movement in our hip socket. So inner ankle shines forward, and then it shines kind of down to the mat and back. And really go as slow as you need to here. And then exhale, coming down. While we're here, we're going to do a little bit of balancing, and again, we'll still stay on working on our right side. So bring the weight in the left foot, and we're just going to tap forward and tap back, alternating our arms. Healthy movement as we're walking into spring. And then we're going to draw, I'm going to use my chair, draw circles front to back. And you could add some arm movements in there. And then reverse that. And then we'll come back to standing. Let's move our chair and do that on the other side. So we'll bring our weight into the right side, and we'll start with our tapping. Remember that core engagement. If you need to, remind yourself with a sounding exhale to breathe. And then let's do our circles forward to back, maybe adding some nice arm movements. And then let's reverse that. And let's just shake it out. Do whatever shape or movement feels good to you. I know things are feeling a little bit better, a little stronger. And on that note, I'm going to move my chair, come back to mountain pose. Take a great inhale, or a nice inhale up. Arms down. And this time, we're going to bring our hands to prayer position at our chest or at our sternum here. Really press our hands in to engage the front body. Feel that core engagement. Bring the weight into the front of the feet. Spread the mat apart as if you're spreading the mat apart. About 5 or 10%, nothing overly aggressive here. So just about 5 or 10% spreading of the mat in terms of your level of engagement. Think of that dinosaur tail behind you that sweeps back and up. That will allow you to hinge forward at our hips, engaging our core, thinking about cinching and zipping our belly up and over our pelvis, bending the knees as our hands meet the floor. And our heels come back down to the mat, and our head drops down, And we're in a nice forward fold, or I hope it's nice for you. And of course, at any time, feel free to just take a shape or position that really brings you comfort and ease today. And on an inhale, we'll bring our hands to our hip creases. Exhale, inhale up. And we'll come into a transition to get us down to the ground. So let's figure out how we want to get down to the ground. You want a block, maybe a blanket, and I'll show you a couple of variations. We're going to, I like my heels on the edge of a blanket, feet at about 45-degree angle. Inhale, arms up. Exhale, hands come to prayer. Inhale, and we're just gonna do squat all the way down. And then my elbows are right here, kind of right on the inner parts of my knee. And I'm in a nice squat. This is without any support as far as me sitting on anything. You can also do this with a block where we squat, core engagement, and then we're sitting up on our block, and this feels really nice for me today. Having that support to sit on, allowing my inner thighs to kind of release and open up, and really breathing here and experiencing the breath in this position. So let's take a few moments to experience our breath in this position, still engaging my feet, my arches, grounded through the feet. And then we'll make our way to seated. We'll just roll forward, remove the block, come down to our knees. And here we are on our knees, and then we can transition down onto our seat. Move my block away. Now we're going to kind of go into the Psoas work as we lay in a supine position or laying down position. So I'm going to come to this seated position, feet flat on the floor, hip distance apart. Shoulder blades up, down, and back. Slightly hands over the tops of my knees or my shins, upper shins. I'm going to bring my palms together, facing each other. Inhale, exhale, cinching as I roll down vertebrae by vertebrae. And at some point you may feel you need some support, so feel free to use your arms to help you get down. And coming down into constructive rest with support under our head and neck. The blanket grazes the tops of my shoulders, feet are hip distance apart, knees are about a 90-degree angle. My hands are resting on my lower abdomen, but you can also have them out to the side, a kind of triangle, palms up or palms down. And let's just kind of get oriented to this position. And we'll take our right leg long, toes to the ceiling, heel on the mat, knees slightly bent. And we're going to just pretend there's a wall in front of us, spread our toes, and footprint the wall in front of us. You may feel the foot on your left leg on the mat really engage as the femur moves kind of out on that right leg. And let's draw some attention on the inhale, of inhaling and focusing on those lower back ribs, nourishing the upper part of the psoas as we're footprinting the wall in front of us. And on the inhale, you may want to retract the femur back. And then we'll bring our leg back into constructive rest pose and notice any different you feel in your hip or even in that leg. It may feel taller, longer, maybe more fluid. And let's even out that left side. So left foot extends long, heel on the mat, toes to the ceiling, and we footprint the wall in front of us. On the exhale, cinching, knees slightly bent on the extended left leg. Imagine a lot of energy or fluidity coming out the left leg from the hip socket all the way down through the leg, out through your arches as you're footprinting that wall. And you may notice the engagement of the right foot, maybe pulling back on the mat a little bit as that left foot footprints the wall. Noticing your breath and focusing some attention on breathing into those low ribs, upper ribs, mid ribs, upper ribs. Inhale, leg retracts back, and we come back into constructive rest pose. And now we're going to do a little movement, very small movements, but we're going to mimic a healthy walking movement in our pelvis. And we're going to play with, imagine the tops of your shins pressing into the wall, a wall in front of you, alternating. And as you do so, there's an alternating movement of your pelvis. One side rotates forward, the other side rotates back, and then the opposite happens. So right now I'm pressing my left shin into the wall and my right side kind of rotates back, or my pelvis does. My right foot is really helping by engaging into the mat. And then I alternate that. Right shin presses into the imaginary wall as my left pelvis side moves back. So there's just this alternating movement of your pelvis on one side anteriorly tilting and then posterior tilting. And my hands right now are kind of mimicking what's happening in my pelvis. And you can play with this on what breath movements really kind of support this kind of movement back and forth. And when you're ready, bring everything back to a neutral position. So your pelvis is aligned and on the same plane, your pubic bones on the same plane as your pelvic hip points. I'm going to grab my block. I'm going to put a block between my upper thighs, and I say upper, I mean upper thighs toward my knees, not really toward my pubic bone, but more toward my knees. I'm going to find that level pelvis, neutral spine, and I'm going to gently, slowly press my inner thighs into the block as I imagine my sacrum dinosaur tail swoops back behind me. And then as I release that on the exhale for my body, there's that dinosaur tail kind of swoops up between my legs as the mat spreads apart. And then I'm going to play with this, squeezing the block. There's a little dinosaur tail swooping back, which causes a little anterior tilt. And then as I release and kind of play with my feet spreading the mat, this dinosaur tail of my sacrum swoops between my legs. And release that. And that just sort of really enabled us to stabilize our SI joint and bring some symmetry back into some movements we were doing that may have gotten us a little, they were asymmetrical. And so when we do something asymmetrical, we want to bring it back into symmetry. So let's roll over to our right side, come up to hands and knees, tabletop. You can also do this down on the ground, on the block, on your forearms, in a chair, arms in a chair. And we're just going to briefly do some hip circles. Coming all the way back if you want into child's pose, and then back around. And be mindful of your hands, base of the thumb, middle finger, pinky, squeezing of the mat to support your wrists if you're on your wrists today. And then we'll reverse that, coming back down. And then when we get to table, let's just do some inhale, cow, exhale, cat, tops of the feet on the mat. And then maybe we do some, movements that feel good to you. Just play with this. Mine right now are these kind of wave-like movements. And then we'll settle back into child's pose for a few breaths. Extended child, knees wide. You can also put a blanket as you go into child's pose. You can put a blanket on the backs of your feet, kind of the backs of your legs, to help make child's pose more comfortable. And let's notice our breath in this orientation as we really, may notice how it feels differently in our back body. And then we'll come back up out of child's pose, transition gently back to a seated position. And we'll go back down to supine in constructive rest pose. Engaging the core as we roll down. Adjusting along the way. And we're going to grab our strap. So I'm going to grab my strap. First, let's just settle back into this position. Notice your breath. Check in with your neutral position of your spine. You don't want to be overly arched, overly tucked. Feet are grounded. We'll extend our left leg long, toes to the ceiling. Inhale. On the exhale, we'll cinch. Bring our foot up to loop. Have the strap loop over the base of the toes, big toes. Bend the knee. My knee's about over my hip. I don't want it kind of too far back, but just over my hip. I'm not death. Let's check in with your grip. This can be a time where you have the death grip on the strap, so just grip it firmly but nicely. Shoulders are really down and back. That left foot is footprinting the wall in front of you. Slightly bent knee on both knees, actually. And I'm going to take my strap into my right hand as I let my leg go out only about, 75 to 50 to 75% of where it could go. So I'm not letting it just flop out all the way. I'm providing some resistance on the strap. Really thinking about my femur staying really engaged in my hip socket. Toes, base of the toes pressing into the strap. Cinching to provide my low back support. On an inhale, foot comes back up to center. Check in, knee over hip. I'm going to switch sides and actually bring my left elbow out to the side. Checking in again on my death grip. I'm going to take my right hand and kind of put my thumb in the crease of my pelvis, my hip right there, my hip crease. And I'm going to slightly internally rotate my toes so my heel rotates outward. The whole leg just internally rotates. And I'm only going to go over about 5-10% of where I could maybe go, and really give some resistance on the strap as the outside of my right foot presses up and into the strap, and really feel that engagement all the way down through the outer hip. Knee is still bent. And then coming back up to neutral. Removing the strap, foot comes back into on the mat but bent. Inhale, exhale, back into constructive rest pose. Inhale, exhale, we're cinching and zipping. The right leg extends forward, heel on the mat, toes to the ceiling, footprinting that imaginary wall. And I'm going to inhale, exhale, cinch and zip as I raise my foot up, lasso my strap around the base of my toes. Extend my leg up, knees over hip, not trying to bring my toes to my nose or behind my head or anything like that, just toes, knees over hip. I'm going to bring the strap into my left hand as I let my left leg move out to the side about 50%, 75% where it could go. Being mindful of that leg that's extended out, my right leg. Adding a bit of resistance to the strap. Pressing the base of my big toes into the strap. Mindful of that femur coming back into the hip socket. On your next exhale, cinching, leg comes back to center. We change hands, left hand goes down to the floor, checking in that my shoulders haven't creeped up to my ears. I'm going to internally rotate my toes, my leg, so it spins my heel outward about 45 degrees, I guess. And I'm going to take my right elbow out to the side, and I'm going to let this come over about 5 or 10%, just slightly across midline. Give a little traction, a little tension as my outer foot reaches up and into the strap. And as that hip socket, femur stays in the hip socket, feel the engagement across the outer line of the left leg. Maybe give a little resistance into the hip crease. And return to neutral, unstrap. Foot comes to the mat. Exhale when it comes, bring both legs together. Maybe rock your hips side to side, see how they feel. And lastly, I feel like the shape that I feel like is missing from today is a little bit of a twist. So you can do this with a bolster or a block. I'm going to get my bolster. I'm going to place my bolster on my left side. I'm back in constructive rest pose. I'm going to lengthen my left leg. And I'm going to use my right hand, so my toes still on my left leg or to the ceiling, heel on the mat. And I'm going to use my right hand just to kind of give me a push, to push my hips over to the left as my knee comes and my leg actually comes to rest on the bolster. And at this time, I can then look to the right, extend my arms out to a T. And enjoy this nice belly twist. Breathing in this space. And the bolster really helps to have the knee level with the hip to protect our SI joint. And on an inhale, we'll return to constructive rest pose. Bring our hips back to a more symmetrical alignment. Shift our bolster over to the other side. I'm going to extend my right leg long. Kind of shift my hips a little bit so I'm kind of on my right hip. Use my left fingertips to give me a little nudge over as that left bent knee rolls over and lays on the bolster. And so I've got my right hand out to the side, and I'm going to slowly kind of unfold my left arm out to a T and let my head and neck look to the left at whatever position feels comfortable. Still have some engagement in my core to protect my back. Breathing in this space. So let's come back to constructive rest and set up for our Shavasana. You've got some options here. You can use your blocks underneath your upper thighs to really open up your psoas and allow it to release and relax. So I'm demonstrating this one. This is upper thighs over a block or a bolster, head and neck supported, and this kind of option for a Savasana that really allows your psoas to release and relax. The other option is to use our chair. So we can use our chair. You may need another blanket here. You can use our chair depending on the length of your legs. You can sit on a folded blanket, put your legs up in a chair. And you can have this kind of orientation for your Shavasana, which is very much like a legs up the wall, which also allows for your psoas to relax. You'll notice in this position, since my hips are elevated, I do not have anything under my head. It's just a little bit of an inversion as well. So take your time to find a Shavasana that works for you. You could also do side lying, belly down, just whatever shape makes you feel more comfortable and at ease today. So let's take a few minutes here. Check in with our breath. Check in with our body. Just check in with a really slow body scan. How are your hips feeling? How are you feeling? What's changed between when we started and where we are now? So you're welcome to stay here as long as you need to, as long as it feels comfortable to you and supportive to you in your practice. I want to thank you for practicing today, hanging out with me to work on our psoas and hip flexors, and just really give some attention and fluidity and strength to the psoas as we move into spring and we start more movements. We start exploring different ways we're going to move as we move from spring to summer. And let's end our practice in some gratitude for our Psoas. May it be hydrated, may it be strong, and may it provide us with the support we need to continue moving in a healthy way as we leave today and go into our daily practice. So the light in me sees and acknowledges the light in you. Namaste. Thank you.